Hello, everybody. Welcome to another. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Esports Podcast presented by By Impuls, and we are back after a much needed break, to say the least, Ben. But we're back, guys, and we're excited for today's episode. Obviously, my co-host here, Ben. So how you been, Ben? I know it's been a while since we've done these, but how's it going with you?
I'm good, dude. I'm good. I'm just been sitting, waiting.
No, but yeah, guys. So today's topic, it's three main topics, or subtopics, topics, if you want to put it that way. But the main issue that we've been seeing in esports is age, and maturity levels in esports have been a major issue for not just organizations, but overall people and their interactions with fans and the way they overall act in the scene. So we're going to be tackling those along with consequences in esports, and should people, if people do something wrong, should we handle the situation the same way traditional sports handles it, or etc. So yeah, those are going to be the topics that we're going to be discussing today. So let's start with the first one: age in esports. Ben, when people say, oh, age is a big factor when it comes to players, coaches, organization owners, streamers, what do you think of that, right? When people say you have to be a certain age, or you're too young, you're too old to be part of esports?
So for me, I was 15, I think.
Right.
Started playing competitive Call of Duty at the end of Ghosts and into Advanced Warfare. And like my teammates or the people that I played with were, I guess, school friends, or
Right.
I never really dealt with people that were like org owners that were really like older than me. We kind of just like played GBs and online tournaments, like under a funny name or something that we decided that day. But so I never really, before I like kind of grew into what it means to be professional and stuff, I never really like knew how the inner workings of esports worked.
Right.
But as I grew older, I'm 18 now. It was about 3-4 years ago, and I started to dabble into management stuff. I started to realize that there are kids that are much more immature than I was at my age when I was in the same situation.
Right.
I guess certain things is demands, I guess, of for a team, or the way that they talk or treat management is something that is the biggest issue for me with it. But because I guess in my mind I would have never treated someone that way if I was put in the same situation. And I think it's kind of like a sense of ego, because these kids think they're a lot better than they are. Like, granted, some of these, like, I guess, immature kids are actually really good, but
Right.
their personality and kind of the way that they hold themselves holds them back as like a person. And it's really hard to see, really tough to see, because they could be really good on a really good team if they change their attitude.
Right. And to kind of go a little bit more in depth into the question, do you think there should be a cutoff line for age? I know we've seen this in Call of Duty and esports in general. You have to be a certain age to even compete. But regarding like management side, the business side of things, do you think there needs to be an age limit necessarily
to be a manager, or
to be a manager, or to be a overall just somebody in the business side of things when it comes to like a company, right? Because nowadays you look at these major corporations now, right, where for the most part, if you're a 16-year-old, you're not really going to get something out of it, right? They're just going to give you that cold shoulder and be like, unfortunately, you're just not old enough. Do you think there needs to be a specific cutoff line of like you have to be 18 and over to even work on a specific team, or in a specific organization or company?
I think it's tough because there's like a huge stigma between like, oh, these kids shouldn't be running top, like they shouldn't be at the top of the food chain.
Right.
But you have to start off with some experience.
Right.
So I think to be like an org owner, I don't think that it should be necessarily like against the rules or unwritten rules or whatever. But I think that as like time moves on and esports is developing, I think that teams and like potential partners or sponsors are now kind of taking into value the actual management team itself versus just looking for somewhere to play. And I think that could be really detrimental to their development as a person.
Right.
So I think orgs need to start taking chances on kids that show some sense of motivation and will to learn, because maybe that consists of something small, like a small management position, but I think it's tough. I don't think you can really put an age limit on it. I think teams that are smart, you and I were reading up on something like a few days ago about a kid who got into some trouble.
Yeah.
Will not be talked about, but I think that they don't understand the legal aspect, especially when you're working with contracts, because you're not of age to really sign anything on your own.
Right. Yeah.
For me, I was able to work around it just because people I knew, but and I was smart about it too. I think there are a lot of people that they're just like, they hear contracts and they're just like, oh, this means it's professional, and that doesn't
Right.
really, it defeats the purpose of what a contract actually is,
Right.
what it stands for both parties. So do I think kids need to be dealing with contracts with teams? No, not at all. But at the same time, I think organizations need to give kids that show potentials a chance, because it can really help them grow and grow into that org owner that they have set out to be. But like I said, as it stands now, I don't think kids have enough business experience to do that, even though it might sound hypocritical from my end. But
Yeah. So for me, I kind of stand in the middle with it, right? I think, like you said, unfortunately, there really isn't a fine line that we can draw, because I think a lot of these cases, when regarding age and like concern, if somebody's fit for a position or not, or their age inhibits them from being qualified, I think that fine line is really blurred because it's very based on on the specific case. And to me, I mean, you see Google, I don't know if you're aware, but Google actually hired this like 15, 14-year-old to work for Google as I think a developer. And he basically, like, it's insane, right? Because you're like, this 15-year-old must be either a genius or he's just really good at what he does, right? But he's just 15, like, I think to me, it's the same concept with esports, where like, if somebody's really good at something, I don't think their age necessarily should restrict them from having a position, as long as they're following whatever rules and regulations that company has. However, at the same time, like you said, there is some teams or players or employees that are older, but yet don't have the maturity that they need to be able to keep that level of professionalism. Like, I know, like, COD players a lot, they're like in their mid-20s, right? And they go out of their way to tweet really obnoxious things, or just be unprofessional about it, along with other organizations that I know their management goes out of their way to do very, very redundant stuff on social media that makes them look very unprofessional. And that, I think that alone overlooks a lot of the positive in it, of being a young owner or being a young member of the staff or management. Because at the same time, it's one of those, it just gets a bad rep to all the 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds. And it kind of puts it to where organizations, companies rather just like, step away from it and be like, what, unfortunately just don't meet the criteria or the age limit. So we're just not even going to bother, because it's one of those where like the risk of you potentially being somebody like that is, in their eyes, maybe potentially a lot higher than somebody that's a little bit older. So I'm in the middle. I think, to me, age depends on specific cases, and some it just doesn't even matter, because it's fair to say that some people are 15 and sometimes a lot more mature than 20-year-olds. So I think it's very, very honest on a case by case basis. So that's age in esports. Regarding maturity, and that kind of correlates with age. We see time and time again maturity being an issue in esports, not even just from players, but the management and organizations and companies themselves. I honestly, I can write a book about the experiences that I've had with people just being very immature on social media, and overall just being very obnoxious with things. Do you think moving forward, maturity is going to continue to be a major issue? Because I think it's fair to say that it is an issue, because you see people on social media rant about really, really redundant stuff and go off on people that they really shouldn't, because it looks really negative on the brand that they're part of, or the company they're working for.
No, I understand. It's just that I've dealt with it a lot, with kids because people. I guess COD is the best example for all of this
Right.
because it's so prevalent, and I think
Mm-hmm.
you see on Twitter I think after the 2K there was a bunch of drama. This weekend there was a Call of Duty 2K Pro Point tournament hosted by MLG, and it just comes down to they lose, they get mad, and then how are they going to handle themselves after that? That's what I'm looking at when I'm looking into players because whether you win humbly and you lose gracefully, I think, or whatever the statement is. Some people, it's never their fault. It's always the game's fault, or it's always their teammates' fault, and that's a real big flag as far as character goes.
Right.
And just cussing people out on Twitter and stuff. It's
which we see a lot.
I just at this point, I sit back and laugh at it because I've tried to. The players that were my players that I always, tried to push on being humble and being nice, but at this point, you can't change it, so you can only find entertainment out of it, from my side. But I stay away from those kind of players.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Cregan in the chat actually said that there's a lot of young people out there that miss opportunities due to just their age, or sometimes their just maturity level isn't there. And I agree. I think I've seen a lot of friends, colleagues that I used to know back in the day, or still talk to as well. But a lot of them, they have really good ideas, they have really good head on their shoulders, but due to just their maturity or age, they kind of lose out on, they get the bad end of the stick and aren't able to pursue something due to just how they destroyed their reputation, right? And that kind of leads me to my second point regarding social media. Like you said, there's some players that just rant on social media. And to me, I look at it from before you post anything, you need to think about it, because it affects you not just now at the moment, but down the line, right? Because that puts you in a box where people are ooh, that's the player nobody needs to talk to, or that's a player that nobody wants to pick up. And we can use the example of Parasite. I believe we were talking about this other day, where Parasite has managed to destroy his reputation due to his immaturity, that now any team, it's like one of those where any team that picks him up is
Pass
really,
that on
really,
their backs.
yeah, it's really, 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 really scary. At least for me as a supporter of COD. I don't want these organizations pick them up. They've seen time and time again. Epsilon saw it. Obviously, that was probably COG. After that, those big tweets that went viral, those clips of him in Killa and all these players bashing people out on land, that put a target on these organizations to where if you pick this guy up, the chances of this happening is higher than normal or whatever, right? So to me, yeah, I think maturity is a major factor, and a lot of people kind of suffer from it due to they destroy their reputation, and nobody's going to want to touch them. Not in that way, obviously, but figuratively, nobody's going to want to work with them, because what's the point of bringing you on if you're just going to cause issues and give the organization or the brand a bad reputation? But yeah, and I think maturity a lot of people need to understand that at the end of the day, you can delete tweets, yes you can, but they get out there, disregard. People take screenshots, so it's something that will haunt you. At the end of the day, that's why I think social media is very, very, very interesting when it comes to stuff like this, because you see people talk so much smack and then delete it, but I'm like, dude, 20 other people take a screenshot of it, so your reputation is destroyed. So that's kind of the little thing that I kind of go to with maturity. Make sure you think before you tweet or talk, because things follow you around.
The problem with Parasite is that you can try. I've had multiple conversations with him. His ego is just so through the roof for some reason. I don't roast Parasite, but he's not an attractive person, attractive guy at least.
You're right.
He's not really funny. I've tried watching his streams. The only time you watch Parasite stream is if you're trying to listen to arguments, and that's just
exactly.
There's so many good arguments
with his own teammates,
entertaining arguments that come out.
Right.
But if I'm for example, Nate Shot is picking up 100 Thieves is picking up Parasite's team. Yeah. So if I'm him, I play against this guy, obviously, I lost to him multiple times, but I'm telling him, if you come to my organization, 100 Thieves has been inactive for it's almost a year now at least.
Yeah, almost a year.
You cannot bring your, this bad reputation back. Like, I'm Nate Shot, I'm big, I'm popular, like, people like me, and I have an opportunity to grow you because people are going to follow what I do. If this is me, if I'm Nate Shot, this is what I would say. And he would say, okay. And then, the next day you just see, what a fucking loser or something on Twitter. It's just like, really? So, it's in the heat of the moment. I understand, but people can't, like, he can't contain themselves. Like, yeah, like I'm seeing in the chat right now, he did win a Call of Duty championship with, but he was carried by, I don't even know who, Crimsix or whatever, who was on his team. But it was so, like, or Karma. It was so, like, now he thinks he's the best in the world.
Yeah.
So
I think, and then that leads to, like, just maturity, right? Like, how do you really need to be that guy out of your friends to be like, oh, I won this tournament, therefore I'm better than you? Like, that's just maturity.
He's literally a meme of all of his friends, like Karma and Ricky, like all the people he plays with. He's they just make fun of him all day, and he gets super triggered. But those players are just so toxic to your community because, first of all, they make you look bad, and it all goes back down to you can't control them.
Right.
And that's my problem is, if someone's being, for example, if you have a kid that's, I've dealt with 13, 14-year-olds before, and they're doing that, you can tell them, you can mold them to be exactly how you want them to be.
Right.
Because they're trying to prove themselves, not only to you, but they're trying to prove themselves in the community.
Right.
Because they haven't competed at locals yet, or majors yet, because they're underage. But, yeah, like I'm seeing in the chat, like, the only person that can has that big of an ego is Karma, and he has a good reason for that. For 3 rings, yeah, it was Miracle's team with Killa for Parasite, but I think that's a big problem. You don't see it too much in other esports. I guess there's only like one player I can think of in League of Legends. That's been talked about way too many times on this show before, but other than that, there isn't really any. You like go down the rosters. TSM, C9, none of those guys ever have any drama. I mean, Jensen sometimes, but I think it's all in good fun for him. But there's not really this toxic attitude in other esports, which is really frustrating.
Right, and I think that kind of puts it in perspective, right? Is this age and maturity issue only in COD, right? Because in League of Legends there is some form of maturity, but there is a major line of this is where you stop. Right, like yes,
and it's defined in their player contracts.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a fine line there, and the organizations go out of the way to make sure that the players are aware of it. Right, so that's one thing too. Right, is it the organization's fault if their players are matured or whatnot? Because at the end of the day, you need to understand that the organization, even though they can't control this human, right, or whatever, they're still liable to what this person says under their brand, does under their brand, and acts under the brand, right? So
but
as
the other person is not liable.
I'm sorry, what?
Because it's like the other person isn't liable because they don't really care.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to get at, right? Like, you see players in COD, like, I'm pretty sure nowadays a lot of organizations, they have like guidelines with the way they're supposed to act,
but nobody follows it.
But nobody follows them, right? But you look at League of Legends, and it's like those guidelines aren't
kicked out and you're banned,
and they're reinforced by, like, cause and effect, right? You do this is what you get out of it, and you get kicked, right? Like, the perfect example we can use is Vasily
or Jensen,
where these players have consequences, and these hurt them badly, right? And that's the thing with Call of Duty. There isn't really any consequence. There isn't. You look at Parasite, what he did with Epsilon. They just kicked them, but there's no consequence.
If you get in a fight with your teammates in COD, you can just find another team,
right?
With League of Legends, like, for those of you guys, I got a little bit of backstory. Jensen, when he was he's Danish, so when he was in Denmark on EUS servers playing solo queue, he was playing on like challenger teams, and he was like the most toxic player, like the KYS and all that stuff. Whenever someone would mess up in his game, he made an appeal to Riot. He got unbanned, and he's one of the best players now in the world. But I think there was a comment, when they were Worlds, and when they were in Worlds, they had to play through the play-in stage. And they're like this just puts into perspective how it relates. This is like the most I've ever seen from a league drama. It's when the play-in draws came out, and I think he tweeted out like, "Who the fuck am I playing against?" or something like that. I don't even know who I'm playing against. Like an insult to the other team. But Like that's like to the biggest extent that you'll see like trash talk. Like you'll never see like, players getting into full on like thread arguments about something that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
I think
And
Call of Duty needs to get to that level.
yeah, and I think it goes down to like you take those examples with Jensen and the way like the limit of okay, you can joke around and be somewhat of a douchebag up to here, but then you have Call of Duty where like I think it was Silly that like apparently got his Twitter account banned, suspended, banned, whatever, and then due to his I believe he threatened an individual.
I heard about this, but I never saw what he wrote.
Yeah, I believe I never saw a tweet, but sources, according to the sources that I saw and read, he tweeted a threat, and that doesn't obviously Twitter has their guidelines that if you threaten anybody online, you're automatically banned.
But that's not through Call of Duty. Call of Duty didn't hand out anything to him.
Well, right, but should Call of Duty do that? In my opinion,
I don't even have the authority to do that though, because there's no binding contract like with League players and Riot. Like the League players have, for example, like TSM, they have contracts with TSM that said they need to stream a certain number of hours, hold themselves accountable. But then there's a contract with Riot that says, all the guidelines that they need to follow as a player for Riot, not just for their team. Like United is a kind of a small organization, and they're not going to try to threaten. They're not going to try to threaten him because they know that they need him on their team.
Right.
They're not going to try to, they probably had a conversation about it, but they're not going to do anything drastic that we would hear about. Where Riot, just, you do that, you're banned.
Right, and you're banned disregard who you are. Obviously, exactly. And it's one of those where like we're yet to kind of see that because there's yet to be a player that has really crossed the line and went off the walls. But Vasily, right? Like I'm not gonna lie, I don't necessarily think he's a high tier player, but I think for his team he was a valuable player. But Riot just banned him, right? So my thing is,
it was within days.
Right, within days. So my thing is like,
or the next day.
In League, what if that was Jensen or what if that was a top tier player, right? Would they? I personally think they would, but realistically, I think that's something that we would have to see down the line. But I definitely agree. I think that League, Call of Duty needs to be more like League, where the developer can step in and be like, whoa, if the organization's not going to do anything about it, we need to do something about it because that's the reputation of the overall scene, and that affects the Call of Duty game, the competition aspect of it.
We have put out a request in our chat. This is being live if you're watching it later for questions, so we will be taking those now as we wrap up the show. I do not see any questions of value yet, but on that note, I think it's very important that MLG and Sledgehammer kind of figure out, and Activision figure out what they really want to do, because you can make them sign contracts, but there's not like it's not structured in the way that it really worked, because MLG is not responsible for all competitive aspects that these players play. So with like League of Legends, any match that's competitive that pro players are playing is Riot.
Right.
It's all done through LCS. But with Call of Duty for MLG, UMG, MLG, there's like a couple new ones. There's tournaments all over the place, so they can't regulate it, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I agree. I think there needs to be more. I'm not really in tune with or understand like if Riot has separate contracts with the players, because I know with the players themselves, Riot.
It's in order to play, they have to be contracted to their team and with Riot. There's like a terms of service that they have to follow.
Oh, okay, yeah, and I don't think that's a thing with Call of Duty. If it is, I've never heard of it, but that's kind of something where like I definitely think the developer needs to step in when the organization does nothing but just kick the player. If they kick the player, fine, but I think there needs to be more repercussions. Just you're off the team. Yeah. Right. Because everybody's going to blacklist Facility. Everybody's going to blacklist him. Nobody's going to be like, that's untouchable. Or you can't. That's somebody you can't touch. The person's just not going to be viable to go to because their reputation is just destroyed. I did see a question in the chat. What are you guys' takes on organizations picking up youth teams? You under 18 teams. If I can, answer that first, I definitely like it a little bit better. I know that was a thing back in the day, and they kind of cut off due to the age restrictions for COD. And the reason why I say I think it's smarter and better is because when you're younger, yes, you're a little bit more foolish, but you kind of are able to mold the player, like Ben said. When you have a kid, you're able to kind of tell them what not to do and mold them to what you think they should, or a way that they should act, right? And I think with youth players, at least to the ones that I've there, and this kind of goes both ways. There's some that I've talked to that are really, really take in a lot of information and run with it, and there's players that just, they're really immature, they don't care, so whatever you say just goes in one ear, comes out the other. But it's good because you have the ability to kind of mold them to the culture that you're trying to build. When you have a pro player that's like in his mid-20s, some of them, yes, they're very reasonable. However, there's people like Parasite where you can talk to them time and time again, nothing changes because this person's just immature. This, or either immature or just that's how they are, right? So it's both ways, but I definitely think having a team that's a little bit younger that gives you more control over the way they are. You know, you can kind of dictate, hey guys, this is not the do's and don'ts. Listen to this, because if not, there's consequences, and that's the last thing you want.
I've kind of changed my philosophy about youth teams. I used to not like them at all, but as we've been like talking about, at Third Sense, it's completely unrelated to the podcast itself, but our organization, I guess it is related. But we're developing what we think makes a quality player, and they're I'm not going to really go into detail, but there are certain aspects that we look for, and I think laying those guidelines out and trying to see if there are glimpses of that in a player is something that's very important. So I think as long as the cost is not too much, and as long as they're playing well, I think there's certain issues that can be dealt with pretty easily. So looks like we have one more question. When you're younger, you have a lot more distractions, but one thing that stands out is that they're a lot more committed. I guess that's not really a question. I guess to expand on that point, yes and no, because school is important and they have to get their schoolwork done. But at the same time, they don't really have too many life obligations other than school. So if they get all their schoolwork done, most teams don't start scrimming till 7 p.m. anyway. So, or at least, whatever Eastern time anyway. So, you have the most of the night to play.
Right.
So I really think they are a lot more committed because they don't have any life obligations to worry about. I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah. To kind of expand on that even further, when I interact with smaller or younger, players, my take is this: like I try to do this in a very, very just transparent way, where I tell them, I'm telling you these things because I've learned from my mistakes. I am obviously a lot older than you, therefore, it's in your best interest
or something.
Yeah, it's in your best interest to take my advice, right? And I can't do that with older players, or I can't do that with with a player that is my age, right? Because we, for the most part, have the same background. We kind of grew up in this as well. So to me, youth players, they're like I said, it goes back to just I'm able to mold them better. They're able to take my advice, and they can know that I'm being transparent about it and not be like, oh, this guy's just telling me what I want to hear, which I think a lot of COD players that are older tend to kind of look at things like when people give advice, or coaches, players to each other, they take it with like a grain of salt and like fuck that. Like, I'm not going to, doesn't matter. I'm not going to use your information because most likely or not, you don't know anything. And it goes back to the maturity level and the whole idea of ego. That's what I'm saying. I think even though, yes, being younger sometimes puts you as being immature right away, I think it's better for an organization to pick up a youth team at times, because that gives them the ability to develop these players and mold them to what they think a player should be like.
I agree. If we can take one last question. Last one, guys. Where do you guys think esports will be within the next 5 years, with Dota 2's World Championship being $21 million prize pool? I think we're only going to grow. We're seeing a lot more mainstream businesses getting involved now. A lot of tech companies and a lot of companies that you wouldn't expect. Madison Square Garden Group, or Madison, I don't even know what it's called. The group that built MSG, the group that built Madison Square Garden in New York, invested into CLG. Optic Gaming got a big investment from an unknown source. I don't think we know.
No, it's a Texas Rangers owner.
Yes. Okay. But there are a lot of people that are getting involved now. So I think it's going to be hard to it's going to be different. This is another episode as far as like small organizations, but it's starting to get there, and it's really exciting. You see, I guess I saw on Twitter the comparison of what the first League of Legends championship was to where it was today.
There's a video, yeah. It's crazy.
100,000 people in a stadium. So, I think we're only going to go up from there, I guess, is my short version. That's a whole episode within itself.
Yeah, just to touch up on before we close out the episode, guys. For the most part, esports is going to grow. It's obviously, the numbers don't lie. You can just Google esports statistics. The growth is insane, like insane, with viewership, just revenue. It's insane. It's going to continue going up. However, is it just the best thing for the scene, right? And we'll make a completely different video for this topic, but I'm concerned not in like esports is not going to work out or it's not going to be a good thing, but overall, if the money is going to be more beneficial to everybody rather than just a specific group, or is this for the greater good of what it means to be part of esports, right? Because to me, that's my concern, where people lose sight of the purpose of why esports was created in the first place, right? The competition aspect. It's more of a who you are, what you're about, how good you are, and how many times can you beat another person. To me, that's the value of being an esports competitor, or being in the industry. It's almost like everybody going against each other, trying to be the best on the block, right? The best kid on the block, if you want to put it that way. I don't want it to where it turns into a money thing, where organizations are just looking to make more money, disregard their teams, their players, and they neglect the fundamentals of esports. That's my concern. And we'll do another completely other video on that, because I think that's a really hot topic that's coming up right now. It's going to be an even bigger hot topic because of all these franchising issues, or not issues, but things coming up, with League of Legends and Overwatch and all that stuff. But before we close it out, we have the last topic of consequence, and we kind of spoke about that in the other previous topic. Consequences, in esports, there just needs to be a lot more people hold accountable for what they do. Like I said, Vasily, I think Riot did the right thing, and I definitely think people that don't do crazy things like that, but are lesser offenses, or if you want to put it that way, or disobedient acts, I still think they need to be punished. Fined, whatever, suspended. I just don't think we need to make sure that the scene does not turn into like a crazy NFL scene where you find people killing each other and you find people domestic violence and doing a lot of this crazy stuff that I think esports was never built around. Or at the end of the day, we like to pride ourselves on being the smarter kids, if you want to put it that way, the nerds that stay at home and just play video games. But to me, I think consequence needs to be a thing. I think organizations need to make sure that they address their players when they're doing something wrong, because at that point, if there's consequence, people are a lot more strict, a lot more boundaries for everything, and there's less toxicity. So that's my take on consequence. There needs to be a lot more with it. I think fines and suspensions, just like they do in I think college football is probably the best example I can use. College football, you get like suspended if you hit somebody in a really inappropriate way, maybe on Twitter, or like on esports related. If you do something very inappropriate outside of it, you get suspended for events or etc. Right? But I think there needs to be a lot more consequences for the players and overall for individuals in the scene that sometimes don't get held accountable. I think they need to be held accountable. And at some point, maybe use them as an example, so like that other people don't go out of the way to do dumb stuff.
Yeah, like I know in League of Legends, if you're late, you get if Faker's late, he gets fined. So they all live in the same house, keeping that in mind. So if he's misses his alarm or something, that's a fine. I know TSM does stupid stuff like whoever's the last person to be at their desk gets the take out the trash or something like that. But I agree. I agree completely.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, BT Viper, what's that, man? I actually know that guy. Shout out. Hex finds his players, and I think that's a perfect example of like how things need to be. Like, if you guys are not familiar with Hex, he's the owner of Optic, but in his videos, he even finds his players for not being adults. Like, if they don't clean after themselves, they get fined. So I think having that to where like there's consequence to any of your actions is good for the scene, because it makes people clean up their act, and it makes it to where people don't, act really mature, and that allows for just growth, positive growth within the community itself of esports. But yeah, I think this is a good place to end today's episode. If you guys are not watching live, we'll upload it on YouTube within the next 24 hours. So that's good for if you guys want to watch it from the beginning. But thank you. We really enjoyed doing these, and you guys can expect more with some pretty spicy topics in the future. Yeah, but I think we're gonna check off now, guys. Have a great day. Deuces.
Peace out.